Chances are you're listening to this podcast because you love bringing wedding dreams to life. It's really magical. But getting booked in the first place, well, that's maybe less than magical. Luckily, there's a better way to connect with couples, and that's through Zola, the sponsor of today's episode. Stay tuned to hear more about this incredible opportunity. Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner with The Wedding Biz, a podcast that provides both education and inspiration for those of us in or interested in the weddings and event industry. If you missed last week's episode, it was a revisit of my interview of catering icon Paula LeDuc of Paula LeDuc Fine Catering and Events. Today's two guests are Julie and Chris Neubauer, the founders of Yonder Design, which is a boutique graphic design firm specializing in branding for social and corporate events. Their specialty lies in creating unique and highly tactile pieces that combine a variety of materials and production methods. This includes save the dates, invitations, and websites to large signage, menus, collateral, and gift boxes. Enjoy this conversation with Julie and Chris Neubauer. Julie and Chris, it is so good to see you, especially after having met you in person at Lori Aaron's masterclass in Wyoming. That was quite an experience, wasn't it?
It definitely was. We're staring out at a whole lot of fresh snow here in Lake Tahoe where we live, just like we had in Wyoming that week.
Yeah. Well, imagine how much snow's in Wyoming at this moment. It's probably about 10 times that. But, what I want to start with is it's so interesting to me that you both are married and are business partners. And I absolutely love my wife, but I can't imagine, 24/7. How did I'm sure you both have been asked this before, but how do you view that part of that aspect of your relationship, that you're married and you're business partners?
I feel pretty lucky. We have a lot of friends that don't get to see each other because they have two different jobs. And I think we've definitely gone through some moments where there have been challenges, but for the most part, I feel pretty lucky that we get to share every aspect of our life together. And I don't know, Chris, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, there's not a ton of separation. We're from breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and most of the working hours. So we generally work from different office spaces, but we're in the same physical location, physical building. So there is a little separation, but not a ton. I think the biggest benefit is it's positive that we get to spend so much time with each other. But yeah, it has. Can cause some fights and separation issues where we're not, one person isn't ready to check out for the day and the other is. So yeah, there's a lot of give and take.
Yeah, I imagine. Well, but what I wonder too is if you all have, boundaries that you've talked about, like, hey, at a certain point of the night, we're not going to talk business, or maybe it doesn't bother you to talk and keep it going.
I think it's a lifestyle choice. I think we've really embraced the fact that this is our day-to-day life, and I think we have on occasion had to create boundaries like, hey, let's not talk about that right now. Let's wait until tomorrow. Or, I think having a family and being up in the mountains it's allowed for us to have activities and other things going on in our life that allow a little bit more separation and other topics to talk about versus just work. But no, it's just a whole lifestyle. It's travel, it's art, it's what we love to do. So it's not really that much of a problem because we just love it so much. And I think that's helpful.
Yeah, there's not a lot of turning off and turning on. Yeah, it's kind of just the lifestyle, like Julie said. We definitely don't have hard stops at a certain hour of the night. We're always talking about work, or we're never talking about it. I think we both kind of know when the appropriate time is, and engaging the other person for it. So maybe early on, the first couple of years of being in business, we had to set some of those boundaries, but now I think we have a good flow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're definitely not the only ones in this industry, who are doing that as couples. So, briefly, I'd like to know what each of your backgrounds are and how you came to find this niche in the wedding industry. Chris, maybe start with you.
Sure. My background is in magazine publishing. So paper and ink, kind of what we do on a daily basis. I had some background in it. I ran a food magazine for a number of years before we got into this. And Julie and I had started dating about 10, 11 years ago. And we were looking to do something together. It was, to kind of take advantage of the flexible lifestyle and time schedule that I had. And that's where Yonder was kind of created, out of Julie's background, which she can kind of explain a little better herself.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, Julie, what would that be?
Yeah, so I grew up with a family of different artists, and I feel like I definitely pulled from each parent and step parent, and even my nana, who is a painter. And I went and studied graphic design and oil painting and art history, majoring in two of them and minoring in one, and just loved it. I actually worked in finance for a number of years in San Francisco, and started working for events and creating events for nonprofits, and then met a friend of ours who was launching her event design business as a planner. And I started assisting her out and just seeing the need for signage or invitations. And I saw a way that I could apply my skill sets as a painter and someone who does lettering. And so I took a letterpress class and learned how to print. And for, I don't know, Chris and I had started dating. Actually, the planner introduced us and was committed to the idea that we should be together. And I needed to create a job that wasn't in finance, that allowed for more flexibility to be with Chris. And we were walking in Tahoe and came up with 3 business ideas, and Yonder was one of them. And we took it one step at a time. And I think Chris saw the checks come in and was like, oh, she does know how to work, and we can be together, and maybe I should be a part of this. So, it just sort of took off from there. And we just really kept launching. We actually started as an event rental business for the beginning of it, before all the rental companies started adding more customization. So that kind of dwindled down, and then Yonder really turned into what it is today, which is mixed media and branding for events. And so it's been a fun journey.
Well, either one of you, can answer this. What would you identify as some facets of your personal signature? Talk about branding, with your brand, what would you say differentiates you from the others?
I would say our specialization is the level of refinement and the materials that we use. We're working on very, very luxury events, but those events tend to have a level of restraint to them. They're not necessarily completely redoing ballrooms on a thematic level. They're taking the natural beauty of a location and elevating it even further, without being particularly gaudy or too over the top. The clients tend not to be terribly showy in what they like to send to their guests. So I think restraint is something that's key to all of our designs.
That's really interesting that you identified as that way, as restraint. I think that's something that's hard for people to really be cognizant of. And I love how that's part of how you kind of talk about your brand. I think that's really important, especially with what you do. And we could spend hours talking about how to understand materials and the production level and complexity and application of design for an overall event. What would be the most important points to mention?
I would say we spend a lot of time understanding the actual venues and the locations where the events are happening. We like to travel a lot on a personal level, and we try to make that often work-related in locations we're going, so we can understand what's happening in the design process for the overall event. So the pieces that we create have a sense of place. We're not creating something that is there for the sake of being pretty. That's generally the last thing we want to do. We're trying to create that enhances the overall design aesthetic that the event designer or the planner designer, whoever it may be, is creating. So that's our goal. So we'll try to go to most of these venues prior to an event, or we'll do as much research online from past photographer friends who are able to share certain things to us that aren't publicly available, so we can really understand a location, both visually, culturally, if it's in a destination that isn't necessarily familiar, trying to understand what materials might be indigenous to that area, what design themes are present, what things are specifically overdone in those areas that we might want to stay away from. So there's just a tremendous amount of research on our end to make sure the designs have a solid sense of place and kind of grounding in that aesthetic.
I think the other piece that's missing from that is also the story of the couple and why they picked that location and why it might have meaning to them, and making sure that they're also very much represented. But I think from our standpoint, mixed media is definitely, when Chris references the history, or like, I really try to understand a lot of the materials being used and how we can apply it into the invitation while not just using paper or, integrating paper or different printing techniques.
When there's a planner involved, Julie, are you still talking to the client as well, the couple, like if it's a wedding, or are most of your conversations really just with the planner or designer?
It's mixed. Some clients don't want to talk to any vendors, which I fully respect. So we try to get that information through the planner. And if they're great at their jobs, it's an easy process, and they understand their clients. So we don't need to talk to them as much. We can get the same information that's relevant to the event through them. And some clients really love being hands-on and talking to us. And I'm happy to do either. As long as everyone's happy, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, it's all about how we can get the best direction coming from be it the planner or the client. As long as we can get that good initial direction and we feel like we have a good read on the overall mood and vibe for the event, that's all we need. And it's just different with different clients.
Yeah. Well, and what about the creative process? I mean, in terms of how you both come up with ideas. I mean, is it in the office, the middle of the night? I mean, like, do you both get together and say, okay, we're going to work on this now, and here are all the parameters and the information and the story that we want to, enhance? Like, what's the creative process like?
That's all over the board, Julie. I'll probably let you take that. But Julie's comes up with concepts. She's had concepts that she created almost 10 years ago that still have not found the right client for. So she's always coming up with these ideas and kind of matching them to the appropriate client. And that client may not ever come along. The ideas come at different times. And you can probably explain more about that, Julie.
Yeah, I have a whole list of ideas or things that I want to execute. And sometimes I don't get to do it right away. And sometimes I like to test things out before I really want, if I'm not confident in the process or how it's assembled or the material, how it will work. I usually have to test that out prior. So I might have a list of ideas or things that we've gotten inspiration from going to an art museum or a location. And, I think we went to Sweden and I found caning, and I found these beautiful caning bags, using actual caning material. And then I tested it out with a launch of a photographer event. And now we've used it for an actual event beyond that with a client. So I like to kind of play with the materials a little bit before. If it's a new material, I'll present it as an idea and then I'll execute different ways. And there's I think I played with a lot of things already over the years. So I kind of have an idea as to how some things can work well. And sometimes it's the clients coming up with things. So some of it comes, just in conversations and experience that can happen now or 5 or 10 years ago. But yeah, and then I have another one where we just, I created like a belt design with leather as a wrap. And we haven't used it. It was just a mock-up that I did years ago. And now we're going to be using it on Invitation Suite coming up, it just seemed to be the right fit.
That's cool. This makes me think of, because, I'm on the music side, and I've also been a songwriter, and, you hear a lot of writers talking, and it happened with me too. I would come up with ideas, like maybe an idea for a chorus or even an idea for a verse or a melody. But I wouldn't, finish the whole thing. And then years later, all of a sudden, here's a situation where, wait a minute, that chorus idea, that melody from God knows how many years ago, it just comes to you. It sounds, that's a real fun part of this, isn't it? It sounds like that's part of what you're talking about too.
Yeah, it's just something. I have a whole list of ideas, and then just kind of all of a sudden, I'm like, this is the client it's for, and I'm so excited for this, and I have already tested it out, so I know it's I know that piece is a good piece, but just waiting for the right client to come along for that idea. Sometimes, it can take a few years, but it's exciting when they're on board.
And we're constantly sampling materials. Julie is constantly searching for different materials from around the world, and the majority of them will never see the light of day. After testing them, we don't think the quality is there, or the price point is just too high, or it simply doesn't work for a variety of reasons. But we're just getting samples in constantly that need testing to see if it is something that could work in the future, because it takes a lot of time prior to actually putting that design in Illustrator and showing it to someone to have the confidence in knowing that, this will work if they actually pick that direction.
Also, like Julie, a few minutes ago, you talked about one particular example with a client where we'll call it a touch point. How can we create opportunities with guest touch points? That seems to be a big part of this.
Yeah, I think a lot of our clients, or some of our clients, are leaning more towards gifting lately. For the invitation and as an excitement. And, it's really while the wedding is about the couple, it's also about, I think, giving back to the people who are important in your life, in your life and your journey, and to show your appreciation towards them. Because they're there to celebrate, it's kind of celebrating both relationships, the wedding of the couple and then also the family and friends. And so these touch points, as far as the conversation, or in my mind, the wedding starts with the conversation, the engagement, the, everything leading up to the save the date, the invitation, and then there's the wedding. So I think there's this whole long journey of the event that people don't really think about it that way. And our clients usually want that to be an experience all the way up to the event. So it might be a gift, and it doesn't have to be a luxury gift, but like we're sending some lovely jams and cookie mix from the venue. So people get excited and really feel special. And it's something that they can interact with and think about up into the day of the event. So there's definitely touch points. And it's kind of like 3 touch points right now, because we also do emails, which isn't too traditional, but with everyone moving around with COVID, it's become kind of a relevant thing depending on how far out the event is. But Chris, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think the touch points has definitely changed. It's no longer a traditional save the date and invitation, and that's it. We're almost always sending some sort of digital save the date well in advance. For planning purposes. In addition,
announcement, I would say.
An announcement, I think, might be a better term for it. In addition to a printed save the date and a website that goes along with that shares much more of the information, because there's often so much travel involved these days and multi-day activities. And then the invitation is not as logistically important these days, because most of the guests have already made their travel arrangements by the time the invitation comes around. So it's really used as a get excited, a hype type piece, if you will, to continue and build on the anticipation for the event.
There are some big wedding platforms out there that make big promises about all the bookings you'll get if you sign up with them. But is that always the case? With Zola, for a start, there are free listings and no annual fee. You only pay to connect with the couples you desire, and you're not going to get spammed, rather just pre-qualified leads from couples who love what you do and are ready to get more information. You'll even get those credits back if the couple doesn't respond to you. And again, it's free to create your listing. And these are beautiful listings designed to really showcase your business. Getting started is easy. Just go to zola.com/Andy to create your free listing. That's ZOLA.com/Andy. They'll even start you off with free connections to make bringing those weddings to life even more magical. Can you all give a couple stories, kind of illustrating what we've talked about so far, where you find or where you uncover some story elements of a couple, and then how you then manifest, whether it's touch points or, however, it would be great to hear a couple examples.
The kintsugi recently in Mexico, where you actually, I think that would be a great one.
Yeah, the kintsugi one. So this is a situation where we didn't talk to the client initially. We just got a mood board and we created ideas, but then it wasn't they weren't thrilled, which is fine. So we got on a phone with them directly and talked to them, and we got their whole interview with the planner. And they started talking about cookies and tea and this bowl, which was kintsugi, the Japanese art form, gluing something back together with gold. And in talking to them, I was like, well, why don't we bring these elements that was so important to your initial dating process? Why don't we'll do we decided to do the cookies at the event, but we did tea. So I found out their favorite tea. And I had custom tea mugs made for the couple as a ceramic piece. And then for the top of it, we sourced, broke, and re-glued all of these bowls together as the invitation piece. And there was just a note on the other piece of it was origami. The groom's mother would give origami pieces to friends as a blessing of love and friendship. And so we did origami invitation with a breakdown of what the kintsugi meant to them and how they both had come from different relationships and they felt like they were kind of broken, which I thought was kind of sad to hear, but that they felt whole and complete by finding each other. And then they also felt like their friends were part of that journey. And so it was kind of 3 or 4 pieces that I glued back together with gold, and how they're whole again because of each other and because of their friends and loved ones.
Oh my God, I love that.
So, and then on the day of the event, we did a little kintsugi details throughout, and then the tea and cookies, which were representative and meaningful to them, and a little piece of the origami as well. So yeah, that's a good one. Good call, Chris.
Yeah, no, I love hearing the story about that. I mean, there's emotional impact, which of course is what all this is about. I know that also, you both have something to say about downsizing a team effectively and growing profit margins. It's a big topic, but what can you kind of summarize about that, about your experience? I guess obviously you have experience doing that.
Yeah, we tried to grow the team and create multiple teams, but I think it creates a different element where you're more managing rather than being creative, and also training. And while I loved having a team, and I still love having a team, I'd love to have a smaller team. I think downsizing during COVID and right before COVID, we wanted to slow down a little bit I think we wanted to improve our customer service and really make sure that our clients felt like they were getting the attention that they needed, which with having a second team, they weren't getting me, which I can only do so much, and they weren't getting all of Chris. And maybe that's a reflection on us.
Yeah, there was a time where we thought only growing that top line number was important, and it didn't really help our sanity. We weren't enjoying ourselves. We weren't enjoying the company nearly as much. Like Julie said, it was just a lot more overhead, a lot of training. We had 7 people in the office on a daily basis, just designing. That wasn't even the printing team necessarily. And we were doing 60, 70 events on an annual basis. It just got to be a lot, and we just decided we wanted a shift in our lives. So we decided to move to the mountains, and our plan was to hire additional people again. And then a month later, COVID hit. So
what great timing!
Yeah, business went to essentially zero, and at that point, we didn't have much overhead. We just had Julie and myself, and the business model shifted almost entirely there to what can we do to outsource the bulk of our job functions. So we strengthen relationships with printers, with calligraphers, different suppliers, vendors who we'd already worked with, but we asked them if they would be able to take on more work and burdens, and they said, yeah, we would love additional work if you're willing to give it to us. So we were able to strengthen those relationships and send out a lot of things that we had previously done internally, and then just kept what we do in-house, the design aspect. I'd say we probably do that better than our printing ever was.
Hey, I was a wonderful printer.
But a better designer.
I used to do all the printing in-house, and what Chris didn't mention is that I was also, we discovered that I was also pregnant at the time. And so dealing with chemicals was also something that I really didn't want to do. And I printed a lot on a Vandercook, which I would hit my stomach a lot. Or my legs on occasion. And and it takes a lot of arm strength. And so anyways, there's also the push there to seek help from outside vendors who we have been with us since we started, and encouraging them to help out with some of the production, because we used to do all production in-house mostly, and we supporting other small businesses really became a bigger strength. And while it was very scary at the beginning, I think it's been a really nice partnership with everyone that we really enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, the end result has been nicer. I think the quality has improved dramatically just because we're able to design in a better way, and people who do what they do, be it printing, be it bookbinding, be it calligraphy, all of these specialists are far better at what they do individually than when we try to do it all in-house. So I think for our end clients, it's just a win-win.
Yeah. What's the hardest part of all this for you all? Like what's the most stressful part, the difficult piece of all this?
Having a toddler?
No, but that's legitimate. We're talking about balancing.
He slept in a dog bed in the garage while I would be working on the laser at 2 a.m. I don't pull as many all-nighters anymore, which is really helpful. But no, I think
FedEx and shipping, I think.
Oh, FedEx.
FedEx and shipping, I think, are the most stressful aspects of the job. Just because the event is going to happen no matter what. It's not being pushed a day, and we're often having to send things absolutely last minute. There's no option. We're not getting guest names until 2 days before an event. So we just have to rely on our shipping vendors, or if we're flying something down via courier or ourselves courier. It's I think that final bit of delivery is often the absolute most stressful and takes up a tremendous amount of time at all hours of the night.
Yeah. Do you both, as we get ready to close here, do you have any overall tips for event planners and their couples to make sure that the working relationship with them is as successful as it can be?
I think organization from the very beginning is really helpful. And I think letting creatives be creative without over directing. Sometimes you never know where you're going to find inspiration from, and if you have such a narrow vision, it's really hard to be creative from that. I think it's just a proper balance. But we have a number of people that where we don't get the proper spelling of names early on, or they're holding off their list to the very end. And that adds a lot of stress on couples and people. And, I think those are two big things. Chris, do you have anything to add to that?
I think from an art direction standpoint, getting a mood or a feeling is far more important for us from a planner, as opposed to physical images of the invitation suites or physical representations of a place card. Hey, can you do this? We want it to look like this. You're not really hiring us to replicate something. You're hiring us to come up with something that works specifically for your event, for your couple, that you may not have thought was even possible before. And I think that's an important thing to kind of have that trust and give us the direction we need to give you the best possible work.
Yeah, because a lot of it can also come from fashion inspiration or restaurant design or the venue or other pieces. I think having inspiration for a look and feel, yeah, I would agree with that versus, copying. I don't like to copy, and I try not to look at other people's work, so that way I feel like it is fresh and unique. But yeah, I think that's important.
And I believe when I heard you both speak at Lori's masterclass, I believe you both said, one of you said that every planner should buy a Pantone book. Is that right? Wasn't that one of the big pieces of advice?
Yeah, color matching. Everyone's.
Yes.
If you say blue, we've had a client come in and say they wanted a blue invitation, right? Turns out their vision of blue was purple.
Oh,
so
geez.
Yeah, everyone. Color language is and color theory. I think it's important to have a color palette and a Pantone book. I mean, even with Lori's team working on the Brush Creek, they actually sent us a physical sample of the linen, which on screen looked like red, but in person it was really a brown. And so everything initially, it's that mix, that confusion that can happen where it's like, no, this isn't really the right color. But we can make Pantone ink colors to match whatever it is. So I think having a Pantone book is incredibly important as far as making everyone just having those essentials. Language.
Yeah, the screen can be distorting for everyone. What you're seeing on your screen color-wise could be entirely different from your clients or from ours. But if you have a number in front of you and that hard Pantone swatch reference, everyone knows exactly what they're talking about. So you don't have any language barrier issues. You don't have any screen issue barriers. It just makes life easier for everyone. So yes, please go get a Pantone book.
That's great. And, is there, again, before we go, is there anything else that either of you would like to add to this conversation that's really, you feel is critical, particularly for planners to be aware of?
Final content. You'd be amazed how often we don't receive final invitation content or menu content, and we're making a lot of edits or filling in the blanks. And it impacts the design if you don't have everything properly worded or spell checked or fact checked. Those things do matter and do save time. That's be one little tip for planners or people.
Yeah, from a proofing standpoint, proof the content that's being sent over before it's sent over. Generally, that's not how it happens. So people aren't looking to proof something until they see what the design is laid out on the menu as it's supposed to be. But oftentimes that isn't a rushed time schedule, and the appropriate time isn't given to it. So, and then missing things on a regular basis. So I think spending enough time in the beginning when you send the content over to fact check it, make sure the websites are listed properly, actually go to something, make sure the addresses listed are correct. Basic proofreading things really will save a lot of back and forth and emails and headaches and reprints for everyone moving forward.
Yeah. That's great.
You mentioned Suits and Kidwell. I think another thing could also be Susan and I don't always get to talk to each other during the design process and when she's creating structures, because we'll sometimes help design. But I think sometimes introducing the teams, like the florist, the photographer, those once a year get-togethers or an email or a conversation as a team, sometimes can really help bridge the gap for an event design.
I love that idea. That makes a lot of sense. Well, this was full of so much information. I really appreciate, the time. And again, seeing you both present in person at that masterclass, there is obviously so much more that we could get into, but I think we really covered some of the basic foundational stuff. So thank you both for your time, Julie and Chris. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thanks a lot, Andy.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Julie and Chris Neubauer. Be sure to check out their website, which is yonderdesign.com. You can find them on Instagram at Yonder Design. And remember to go to zola.com/Andy to create your free listing and get your first few connections for free. I want to mention next week's guest, and that's going to be a brand new conversation with the amazing Lewis Miller, floral designer and founder of Lewis Miller Design out of New York. And finally, be sure to follow us on Instagram in particular, at The Wedding Biz, and we'll catch you next week.